On this episode of WAC Attack, Barr from KWB Creative joins us. We're going to talk about his entrepreneurial journey. He walks us through his creative process. You're going to hear about some of his clients that he's worked with, which, by the way, is quite impressive. And we're going to talk a little bit about some content strategies that you can use for video and on social profiles to get you through your entrepreneurial journey or your side hustle that you have coming up. This is not an episode you are going to want to miss. Welcome to the WAC Attack podcast. Today with us, Barr from KWB Creative. Kyle, how are things?
Good. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about KWB Creative and what you do?
Yeah, so we are a full-service production company based in Northern California. So essentially, our mission is we tell truthful and redemptive stories that move people. So we produce everything from commercials to social media content to photography for different businesses. So really, if you have a digital content need, like we'll help tell your story.
And you specialize in video, correct?
That's definitely our main
video,
service.
Photography, all that type of stuff. Now, we were talking a little bit before the episode got started, and you said you also build sets amongst other things, right? There was pretty impressive things you do too as well.
Anything that goes in front of the camera, we're responsible for in and of itself, right? So, like for example, we did the project I was telling you about. We worked with a wine company, and so what we did is they said, hey, we want to build, or we want like the set to feel elevated. And so what we did is we, hired a set designer, collaborated with them on kind of what we wanted, what their mood board was from the client. And then we interpreted all of that and then brought someone in to specifically do that. So I didn't build it myself, but our company was responsible for everything.
You were facilitating it.
Totally. And as a director and as a cinematographer, that's what we do. Like, everything that happens in front of the lens is we're responsible for in a way.
Nice.
So
before we start getting into the nuts and bolts and all the really cool things you do, I know I threw you a little hook there. Tell us about how'd you get started in this?
Yeah. So essentially, when I was in high school, I took like a filmmaking class, and I thought it was super cool. And we watched, a bunch of Alfred Hitchcock movies, like Dial M for Murder and like all this stuff. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And
which part? The being in high school and watching movies for class? Or
well, just the idea of like storytelling.
Yes.
But yes, watching movie in class was like a huge win.
Yes.
And so, but from there, I got offered to hey, do you want to help with like the senior video? And I thought the guy who was making it was like really weird. So I didn't get involved. I didn't touch a camera at all. And then when I was in college.
Sound familiar?
Sounds just like Wally Curtis and I, but go ahead.
Yeah. And when I was in college, one of my roommates, like my junior year, got a GoPro. And I thought it was like the coolest thing. This is like when GoPros like first came out.
The
and we're like,
GoPro.
Yeah, it was like maybe generation 1, 2. And he was like a wild guy. He was from Minnesota. And so he would like jump off cliffs with it. He actually, total side tangent, but like he bought like a little raft off Amazon for like $100 and like got a motor for it, and then would go in like all the rivers and ponds that you're not supposed to have a little raft in and like film it. And I thought it was the coolest thing, right? So I was like working
and then they had the waterproof shell and they'd stick it under water and you're like, whoa.
I was like, whoa,
yeah, when the GoPros came out, it was groundbreaking. He's like, I film anything I want to do action wise. It was great.
It was wild, like what you could do with it, right? And what experience you would ultimately show people is like different than anything that anybody's seen before.
I mean, a lot of the content that's on YouTube over the last 10 to 12 years in the action sports or extreme sports.
Oh, yeah. GoPro.
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 Any of this mountain bike stuff, any of the racing, any of the extreme sports, people
Most of it's GoPro.
It's all GoPro.
GoPro became so popular, their brand became a noun. Think about that.
It's like Kleenex.
Yeah.
Essentially, so I had a security job.
That was really good. Total side note. He had like Kleenex. Dude, I wouldn't have thought of that on 3 seconds off the spot.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, but continue.
Yeah.
So another tangent off that, I do think that it's a negative, not a positive.
All right.
Not every time. Not every time.
Enlighten us.
Well, we talked about this in our marketing classes in college. And so this idea that you become so brand associated that it becomes a negative, not a positive. So when people talk about your brand, you're saying, oh, I want a Kleenex, but then they'll go buy some random brand because they're not associating that directly.
Ah.
Does that make sense? Like you've taken over the market
Yeah.
so much that no one really cares.
That people
that
don't know
your
it's your
brand
brand
becomes the generic product name.
yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Oh, go get a GoPro. Yeah, that one's cheaper. Get that. You know,
Yeah, it's like
a
it doesn't
Sony
really
action
matter.
cam.
It's like if somebody says,
Exactly.
"Can I have some Advil?" and they're like, "Oh, I got a random painkiller for you."
Right.
Yeah,
Totally.
Yeah.
That's generic for ibuprofen.
So it's
So-
kind of like a negative thing. Anyways.
So continue on, right? You GoPro, you get excited, you're into this, you know, get to the point of where do you sort of go, whoa, maybe I can make a business out of this.
Yeah, so essentially I like started getting a GoPro for my security job, saved up all my money, which was like $400 at the time, which is like an insane as a college student. My parents were like, don't do this. And so then I like shot a few videos for my friends that were absolutely atrocious. and
Yeah, but also the quality of the recording on the original GoPro is nothing like it is today.
well, just even like the story of it. I mean, everything just sucked,
Yeah.
you know, but essentially my university was looking for like student workers to pay like 15, like minimum wage at the time, you know? And so from there, I like got a job and I started learning the basics. And that next summer, I like, some people were asking me, hey, can you make a video for my church or like my nonprofit? They're like, yeah, we can give you like some money. And I literally remember like looking at my parents. I'm like, someone wants to give me money to do something that I think is creatively fun.
Yeah, and then you went, ha ha, you were wrong.
Well,
The best feeling in the world.
not like sorry, I didn't mean to frame my parents as like a negative.
No, I wasn't saying
No,
it was
no.
negative, but you know, we were told to say a similar thing. We're like, really, you know, like it wasn't the path that they went, or it wasn't the thought process that they had thought about, or they were able to think about, like as a way to have a job or to make money, right? And then you're like, but I think I can do this, right? And then so the first time it happens, you go, okay, I think I'm on.
They
to
were
something.
actually super supportive. I mean, they gave me like money to buy my first camera.
Oh,
You know
there
what I mean?
go.
So like,
Yeah.
I think they were super supportive. So I didn't mean to say that they didn't help.
Yeah,
but I would say like it's an uncommon path.
It is an uncommon path, but one of the beautiful things about when you're young and you happen to find something that you're passionate about is you stumble into something, and with your own naivety and lack of responsibilities at a young age, you can actually create something out of your passion and grow it because you have the time to do so.
And I agree with that 100%. I feel parents could do a huge service to their kids by not forcing them to fit into an adult profile.
Especially
You
between
know,
the ages of
when-
18 and 22.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know, let them go explore and do things and encourage interest, right? You know, let's just put it like this. 10 years ago, what do you think Mr. Beast's parents were saying to him when he was making videos on YouTube? They were probably like, so when are you going to get a real job? And then the YouTube Partner Program came out. And he goes, so maybe I'm like already doing a real job, you know? And he starts, you know, he's got 2 commas in his bank, right? Most people just have 1 comma in the bank. That guy's got 2. That means millions of dollars, right? And so you got to think about that concept of, you know, encouraging that sort of, like you said, when you're young, a little bit of naivety, a fair bit of optimism, right? A little bit of opportunity. So you get that, you start working with friends, go.
Yeah. So essentially from there, I like worked at a church for a year to like, I think there's 2 sides to kind of, at least my journey is. One is like the creative aspect is like, how do you actually like expose a camera? Like learning how to light a scene, right? And so I feel like working at a church for a year, you know, after I discovered my passions and got some gear, whatever, that was amazing. So I was able to learn the creative skill.
And you learned about production.
Yeah, and learned about production, right, as a whole. And then the second half is like, how do you learn how to run a business? Like that is completely different than like knowing a skill. Like I know how to expose this camera. Well, how do I deal with clients and
That's
relationships?
what this podcast is all
Yeah.
about, baby. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
We get people that come on here and they say the exact same thing. And
Yeah.
it's literally, oh, I have this really great skill, but I had to figure out how to be a businessman first
Yeah.
in order to really scale or really grow.
Yeah.
And simultaneously like learning in growing in your skill as you're growing with your clients. I mean, so that was kind of my journey, is like through college, kind of learned the skill and then got to a place where, hey, like people want to pay for it. Great. How do I like monetize this? And kind of like that moment, you're like, what's that moment for you? Well, my wife and I were going to get married And basically we were like looking at like what church to go to, and like,
And her dad's like, son, how are you going to support my daughter?
no, he was super supportive. And I was like, hey, Morgan, I have 6 months savings. I was like, but I feel like God's calling me to like run my own business. And she's like, well, great, let's do it. And
Rock on.
never had
That's awesome.
I've never had a W-2 since. And so we had like 6 months savings. She's like, let's go for it and let's do it. And
So time check. What's the time from that date to right now?
So we literally got married May 5th. So our anniversary is like in a couple weeks.
May 5th, what year?
We're going to be married for 5 years now.
Okay, so you've been doing it for 5 years.
Yeah. Full time, like freelance, but like I've had a business operating for 8 years now.
Okay.
And so now we have a team of 3 full-time and then 2 part-time, and then we'll hire in vendors as needed for bigger and bigger projects, or multiple different days. So
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So I'm just impressed because, there are a lot of people, when you look at vendors you can work with for your business, like you said, to help you run the business, or in your case, help out with marketing, outsource some of that. Usually you look at organizations that have got like a 10, 15, 20-year track record, and they've got a pretty decent identity. I'm wildly impressed with the identity that you have after just 5 years, because I mean, you guys have done some pretty big work, from Lowe's to Cupcake Wines. I mean, you worked with 3 ventures. No, we're like pretty low in total. But you've worked you, and I'm sure there are pretty large other amounts. I don't know your entire client list, but that identity in 5 years
is pretty impressive.
It's pretty impressive, and most people don't know this, but you actually have done and shot all of the videos for 3 Ventures, our consulting firm. Also, you are one of the architects of this podcast, right? Yeah. That's why you're on here as a guest today. So,
that's not the only reason why you're on here, but it's one of the reasons why we did want to have you on. I think the thing that is really the most interesting about your story is the depth of your client base, and also the amount of gear that you have, and to run your production, to be able to shoot the quality and to get to a certain level. It's a fair capital investment to do what you're doing and to get to that level, and then impress that level of clientele, and then have repeat business. I mean, when you guys show up, it's a legit setup. It's not just somebody comes in with a camera. No, it's a whole full-blown crew, vehicles.
I remember looking at the first invoice, and I was like, setup fee. It's like setup day. And I was like, okay, whatever. We'll see how this goes.
Full-blown office
roll
takeover.
up. Okay, we're here. Knock, knock, knock. 7:30. They're here, and it's like ants. Just moving stuff in and out. And then in an hour and a half, suddenly our entire office is a production studio. It's wild. I mean, I remember watching them shoot, and I'm sitting in an office in a different room in a different part of the building, and I'm literally watching our people shoot videos, and they're talking stuff, and I'm like in this like producer dungeon, right? And I'm sitting here, I'm like, this is pretty cool. I like this. Like, his hair is a little off, folks. Let's change that thing in that background. It was a really cool experience to not only shoot the video, but also to be there, a part of it as a business owner, and like feel as if it was a really good opportunity to partner with somebody who is really invested in bringing whatever vision we had to life. So I appreciate that. I know Curtis appreciated that.
It felt like a sports game. It seriously felt like we had a football team right out in front when we were shooting the video. We had everybody who wasn't playing or that was coaching away from the scenes with all the technology.
Makeup.
They were watching the screen. They were watching the audio. I don't like this. I don't like that. Coming back, making tweaks. We'd go out, call a timeout, change some stuff, run another play.
I mean, it felt like Hollywood in our own office, and here we are in Northern California. So it was really cool. So.
Well, thanks, guys. Like, that's the experience that we want our clients to have. And, like, that makes me feel so good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure it's probably why you've had some really cool clients. So what are some of the really cool clients that you've had an opportunity to work with? Yeah,
I think, like, name recognition-wise, like, we've worked with Puma, we've worked with Traeger, Wells Fargo. We've worked with both the 1 and 2 biggest wine brands in the world this past year. Like, Visit Sacramento, we've worked with.
The brand equity is there for sure.
Just some casual drops.
Yeah, just like, casual.
Like, but I think for me,
like
as a
now?
business, no. Like, I think for me, like, I don't necessarily. I think those are all cool. Like, working with Yeti is tight. Like, I can tell my friends, oh yeah, I worked with Yeti. Like, it's great. However,
it's not your favorite project, or it's not the one that you were most passionate about.
To me, like, I get just as excited about filming with 3 Ventures or like some of my smaller clients who have small budgets as I do with filming with the massive budgets that I'm given, that I'm building sets for, because like,
so I know somebody that knows you.
Oh, really?
And I was with him 2 weekends ago watching a UFC fight, and I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, Kyle gives his 100% attention and effort. It doesn't matter if it's a small project or a huge project. You get 100% of him for every single thing he's doing. So,
who was it?
Ta-da.
Was it your neighbor?
It was my neighbor's son.
Yeah. I love your neighbor.
Because I think they went to Jessup, or
Yeah, they did.
yeah, and that's actually where you went to college.
He
so that
he
makes sense.
actually worked for him in the production studio at Jessup. Yeah.
So he was my boss, and then he helped me, like, kind of when I was starting, like I would hire him on as like friends to like build this community. But yeah, I mean, that's what I believe is, like, no matter if you're giving me a $5 or $100 million, you're going to get the same effort. Now, like, scale and scope and what we'll do for you will be different, you know.
Of course.
But
it's your passion.
But I think what we try to do, regardless of the name, is like, you're coming to us as an expert, and like, we want to deliver an amazing experience for you, and that comes with gear, that comes with the show. But outside of all of that, like, what really matters is the story we're telling, because you can have, and I tell this to every client that we meet, I probably even said it to you guys, like, we can have the best cameras, which we do on set, but everybody has those. Like, you could search in this area and find like probably 4 or 5 people who would have the cameras that we have. But at the end of the day, like, none of that matters, because if we don't tell a story that connects with your audience and moves them to do what you want them to, then it doesn't matter.
Then what's the point? Yeah, why have the video?
What's the point?
Absolutely. So let's talk about this.
Yeah, hold on.
Let's talk about your favorite project that you've done, and let's talk about maybe how that included some of those successful ingredients of telling that story and why that had or was so successful.
Yeah, I was like, so last year, let's just talk about last year, just because there's so many amazing projects. Like, we partnered with Visit Sacramento and did like a whole travel piece for them, and it was a really like niche video that they were going for, and I loved it for kind of the 2 reasons. One is like production wise, like, it was elevated. We were all around, we were like 14 locations in 3 days, all around Sacramento, like at bars, at wine, at restaurants.
So it was fairly mobile.
Oh, it's super mobile. And then their niche market
Visit Sacramento.
Yeah. And then their niche market was like event planners. Like, hey, we want to target event planners, and we were on a call with the agency, Phil, he's amazing, and then the actual like CEO of marketing, or I forget her exact title, but she was like, yeah, we loved it because like the 65-year-olds in the room who help us market our brand loved it, and the 18-year-olds loved it, and it like everywhere in between. I was like, that's such a huge compliment, you know, that's pretty everyone good. Resonated with it. It's like, that's what we want, is it's not just
successful job.
Yeah.
Yep.
And good client experience overall, you know.
So
that's like front of mind.
So when you're able to capture a younger audience and an older demographic in an audience, and you look at kind of where, you know, society is going with social media, do you have any tips or tricks or things that you like to do? Maybe don't give away your secret sauce, but sell the sauce without the ingredient list, and then talk about, you know, how do you capture like different demographics and their attention?
Yeah, I think it comes back to like, what story are we telling as a product? Like, I think there's different ways to tell a story. Like, we were in a meeting just a couple hours ago, and we were talking about all these ideas, and we're like, one of the questions was, do we need this one voiceover? Do we need multiple people? I was like, hey, look, there's 25 ways to cut the pie. But like, we have to find the one that works best for you to connect with the people that you're trying to connect with. Yeah. And so like, when you talk about like, I think, how do I say this? I think Instagram success is overrated, because I think you can get the clicks. You can get the clicks.
I agree totally.
Like, you can get the clicks, you can get the views on TikTok or whatever you're looking for, but that doesn't equal loyalty as a customer.
No,
dollars in my bank account.
Yeah, or dollars, yeah.
Just not 2 commas, because one is FDIC insured.
That's very true with Silicon Valley Bank debacle. But yeah,
So,
I hear you on that.
Let
So
me
talk a little bit about your creative process that you have with getting the videos pieced together, and then also how you manage working with some of the clients too. Because like you said, just the number of followers, likes, views, etc. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't put dollars in your bank account. And it is about telling that journey to the audience that matters, regardless of how large or small that is. So talk a little bit about that creative journey and that process.
And I think for us, we don't do placement. So let me like caveat everything that I'm saying with like, we're not the ones posting it for our clients. Like we're not the ones.
But 3 Ventures does. You can contact us at 3ventures.com. Shameless plug here. Continue.
So like when we work with a business, either we're talking to their marketing person who has like a placement plan, and like to them, clicks and likes is their world.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
that's what they
it's
live
their
in.
engagement.
Yeah, to
So-
me that's not. It's like if you get it in front of your person that you're trying to, that they go, I want to learn more, click or whatever. Like that's my job. Their job is to get it in front of you.
100%. I agree totally.
But your question
Do you
is,
ever have any desire to move past just here's the delivered product?
I've like thought about it, like genuinely, and I
Mhm.
think like I've been thinking about it more and more. And to me, there are things that are enticing about it. However, at the same time, the people that we collaborate with most are agencies, and so those people
That's
would
what they're
become
doing.
our direct competitors.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah, and I don't want to like ruin those relationships.
Yeah, and for them,
self-cannibalize.
Yeah.
for them to get into your business is probably something they don't want to do because they don't have the volume for it, nor like
capital.
there's a capex involved there, and you don't want to get into what they do because then you lose leads. So, tomato, tomato. You gotta kind of know your lane and know what's not your lane.
Yeah.
But on to the creative process.
Yeah, I think for us, like we first try to understand like what are your goals, like, and I think every business is probably like similar to that. And then like honestly, it's just like what story are we telling? And some people will say, hey, this is like I think you guys are very much this way because you guys are very creative. Like, hey, we want this, like we want X, and it's a pretty box, and there's creative freedom within that box. But some people, say, hey, I want the box. My box is this. Like, I don't really know.
They're throwing you a net, and we're throwing you an outcome. Like we're like, this is our vision. This is our outcome. I don't care how you get from point A to point Z. Just know that when you get to point A Z, this is the outcome we need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so some people are like, again, I was in a meeting earlier and I was like, well, you could make it like Western theme and like you could really get really creative with the brand. And
They just know they need a video, and they're like, I don't even know how to execute. I don't even know what I want, and they just pay you. And that's where the 3x cost comes in for you, I hope, right?
yeah. And so like, if
Yeah.
we're taking on, like, that's kind of the scalability is like, how crazy are we going creatively? If you're saying, hey, Kyle, I got 50 grand and you go nuts with it and come back with some amazing ideas, like we could do a
Squatty
lot.
potty pooping unicorn soft serve.
Like we can do like some really creative, like out there narrative, like you can go narrative piece, you could do X, Y, and Z. So anyways,
I hear you.
And ultimately what we do is we put together what we call like a treatment.
Mhm.
And so we'll basically then pitch our client and show people who are analytical something very tangible. Because what I learned early on is like not everybody can see this concept.
No, you and I are in the same land right now, but continue. Yes.
And so it's like, and some people that concept will change over time. So it's like a working document of like, say we're doing something that's a little bit more docu-style, which is very on trend right now. And so we'll share, hey, here's our interview questions.
Describe
I
docu-style.
was gonna play the dummy here. What's docu-style?
Yeah. So it's, say we're interviewing somebody as our main storyteller,
Okay.
instead of like something that is just like B-roll or something that is just, like any Netflix documentary is
Okay.
docu-style, but people adapt that for their brand.
Right.
Brand
I hear
video.
Kind of like a lot of our videos at 3 Ventures.
So all of your stuff is docu-style.
Yeah. So describe this to the common person who might be listening. It's basically you sitting on the screen talking about your passion, your interest, your business, etc. And in between you talking, it's got a nice cuts of you doing something or your product or whatever you're doing or your process, etc. So it's really incentivizing people to work with you or want to buy your product, etc. So.
And in the same amount of time, you could just go to 3ventures.com. And again, another shameless plug. And you can watch this man's beautiful face talk to you for 1.5 minutes. But wait, there's more.
You can go to KWBcreative.com and find a whole hell of a lot more. Back to the show.
But quick now, subscribe for $19.99.
Just like shameless plugs.
Yeah, we don't have
every
OnlyFans
5
yet.
minutes. We don't have sponsors, so 3 Ventures is just the sponsor every time.
Exactly.
Oh, we have sponsors. It just rhymes with my bank account.
Yeah, the sponsors are pretty good. We're still working on those. Every time we drop like one of our favorite products or something, we're like, and if you want to sponsor this podcast, you can definitely feel free and let us know. That's sort of our strategy, right? The initially is the in episode advertisements, right? Then we'll get into some of the sponsors of the show, and then we'll get into some merchandising and stuff like that. But I think what's been really cool about this is, obviously Curtis and Wally and I, we like to do things right, as I think folks can see as they've been watching these episodes and everything else. We've seen what professionalism looks like with our experience with you and everything else. And this is really an opportunity for us to, as business owners who run a business together that's, successful and busy, it's an opportunity for us to get to hang out and chat and talk shop and bring in people who we know in our network and our contacts who are also doing other really great things. I mean, and a lot of people don't even know this, like Scott, who's our producer, all the cutting, everything, he's doing that live. He has a lot of the creative outlets in here too. So for us, this is also like a boys' night, So it's really fun and enjoyable. We do dinner beforehand. We talk with the guests. We get to do all this fun stuff, and so, for us, this is a little bit of our creative outlet too, as well. And so we've really really enjoyed that. So, I'll pass it back over to you before we started getting silly.
I think one of the interesting things, though, when you talk about people sponsoring the show, we want it to be actual products and goods and services that we vetted and verified. And it's like, hey, we use this thing in our everyday life. I'm not trying to have something on here where it's like randomness. McDonald's, good for you because you're a big brand, but you're never going to sponsor this show because I personally will not allow it because I don't eat there.
Watch McDonald's in 3 years. So we want to have a part of our menu.
Call me Phil Mickelson at Live Golf.
That doesn't have any seed oils or trans fats or preservatives. We want to call it the McFresh menu. And we'd like you, Curtis Morty, to produce
grass-fed, grass-finished beef.
Curtis will eat his words.
I'm just like foot in the mouth, right? What I've always said, I don't know if this is total tangential. We'll take 30 seconds and kind of go back. I don't know if McDonald's can make the supply chain to actually make that switch, because I've thought about this a couple of times over. If one of these big corporations made a big investment in their business to actually get rid of funding the science in their favor and a variety of other things, and actually going down the rabbit hole and getting to the people who have actually done the legitimate research and done the due diligence on what is actually good for the human body, that is so ripe for somebody to come in and just dominate everyone because nobody is doing it.
Yeah.
They could quadruple their prices right now and people would go.
Their user base, people are starting to catch on. I mean,
anyway, we don't need to go too far tangential because this isn't the health and fitness podcast. We've done
180 this one. Let's go back the other way.
So we're going to kick this back over to Kyle. So we were talking about the creative process.
But Kyle's
here.
a fluoride hater too, by the way.
Hold on. Yeah. Well, maybe you can come back on and we can talk about health and fitness another day.
Here's the thing. I know as much as my wife. Who got me on the non-fluoride thing.
So what we're saying is maybe your wife can come on the podcast with you.
There you go.
And we can have a good time talking about the origins of KWB Creative, right? And fluoride, right? We can knock that bad boy out.
Yeah. So I hope your wife puts this on your Christmas card and it's like a little video of like, my wife knows more than I do.
Dumb ways to die. All right, let's get back to the creative process here. So balancing the creativity and the practicality of projects, because you were talking about how sometimes clients will come to you with $50,000 and maybe they got some boundaries, and then versus us, we're like, hey, we know this very specific outcome. How do you manage those two?
Yeah, on our kind of discovery call, I tell people this all the time. I was like, creativity and budget go hand in hand. And so If you want to film out of a helicopter, that's one cost. And if you want to film on your iPhone, that's another. Like, where do you see kind of your project?
But if you buy a DJI drone, you could get it for a budget cost.
And like, it's a joke, and people laugh at, and I like make it a joke, you know, when I'm talking to clients. But like, that's the reality of our business is like, if you want to build sets, like there's like a hard cost to that.
Right.
And so talking creatively, it's super fun. So like when you see these movies, everything is curated. Like every single thing is curated in front of that lens. Like the movie that should have won best cinematography, like the Batman. Like it's like if Greg Fraser just showed up with his camera and just set it there, and the art department wasn't there, and it was just like this empty room, like it would look terrible.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so it's like it's all the team coming together. So like if you want it to look like a Batman, it's going to be an insane budget. But if you want it to feel more organic, you want it to feel authentic to who you are and not curated, like we can be a little bit more on that. You know, so figuring out ways, what is my sandbox as a cinematographer, as a businessman to play in, you know? That's basically what I want to define so that we can make sure. I think a lot of, and I don't know if this is congruent across all business owners, but it's to set just realistic expectations. Like, what are you going to receive? Are you going to receive the Batman? Like, because we can, you know, push boundaries, you know, to
Good.
Yeah. You know, I'm not Greg Fraser by any means, but like we can push boundaries to like make it the most creative of all time. Or
Excellent.
Yeah. The rest of the podcast, you have
Gotham
to
loves you.
There's a great short in here somewhere. I'm not Batman. I am.
Next, like client call, I'm just gonna be like, "Hey, Curtis, can you just be in the background?
No.
Like no one will see you. They'll just hear you."
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be good. Well, so you manage the practicality with budget in the relationship. Sorry, Curtis is having a good time.
Yeah.
The practicality between budget and creativity. And I think that's a good way to describe it too. You know, because if somebody wants to be uber creative, you know, it's like, hey, do you understand the complexity of bringing that to life? You know, in a real, in a real,
No.
in a real context versus like a CGI context, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and a lot of them they don't understand it. We have we have with the client built a studio in the cloud for special effects studios who do a lot of big time movies in Hollywood, and you know, just the infrastructure to the CGI stuff is the same thing. You know what I mean? Let alone the physical stuff on site.
Well,
Curtis can't. Curtis can't keep his biscuits
all the
together.
Batman shit goes through my head right now is ridiculous.
College humor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All the college humor videos.
Burn.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen that, Google Batman college humor and thank us later.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, getting back on track. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm trying to. I want to get this thing a little bit back on track here, so we're not just talking about like Batman and Christmas cards and you know whether or not we believe in fluoride or not. You know, a bunch of random stuff that YouTube's going to be like strike number one with. So, but with that said, let's talk about how video has changed recently. So, obviously, video is very, very big, and especially with shorts, with TikTok and Reels on Instagram, also shorts on YouTube. Can you talk a little bit about the power of video in your mind and sort of the rise of shorts?
Yeah, I mean, the power of video is everything. I mean, stats are like what 90% of the internet or something like that is like all video streaming.
Mm-hmm.
You guys probably know the exact stat.
I should, but I don't.
Yeah.
Not off the top of my head.
But it's crazy. It's crazy high. Let's just start there because someone's going to fact check this and be like, Kyle, you're wrong.
Yeah, and then also to throw in there, streaming platforms would fall into that category.
Yeah.
Right. So streaming is massive.
It's huge. And there's a way you're connecting your story. So it's moving pictures. Like you're connecting your story on such a deeper level, not only emotionally, but visually with, and I think specifically we're talking with brands here, not necessarily just narrative like movies and stuff like that. But there's a way that people are connecting.
Okay, so I have actually, do you have any other thoughts? Because I want you to finish this question, but then I have a follow-up question that's in
Yeah,
relation.
and I think Reels with that become more and more. I mean, Vine was a thing, and now TikTok, and then Instagram.
Oh, Vine!
Reels.
You went back about 10 years.
Yeah,
that was good.
I'm hoping it comes back. Genuinely, it's a huge thing. However, when you're talking about what's trending. More like, yes, there are people creating more and more content now than ever before on their phones, and it's trending and all this stuff. well, what these bigger brands and companies are doing. I was talking about this with one of my director friends who lives on the East Coast. He was like, look at what Nike just did with HBO. They just made a whole long form documentary movie instead of creating commercials. So what's happening on the big scale is that these big companies are no longer saying, hey, we're going to spend $1 million to $2 million on this commercial ad. Nike's a great example. With LeBron, we'll go put all of that money into a long form documentary that now connects them with their brand. And I think
yes, because an ad is non-immersive and a documentary is immersive.
It is very true. And you also got to think about it like this. Run a little pseudoscience experiment for the audiences out there listening. Pull up a stoplight during, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Hi, I'm Batman.
Yes, and go be Batman police officer. And just look around at everybody in their cars and see how many of them are on their phones.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to say a majority of them will probably be on your phones, is my anecdotal take on this. Now, the attention span is what, maybe 2 to 3 seconds, whatever. I mean, dink, dink, dink. People are so inconvenienced by having to wait at a red light or having to
they just want to
wait
be
in line
entertained
at a grocery store.
Oh.
And they're just sitting there and they just sit there on their phones and they just scroll, even like walking across the crosswalk. My point here is not to point out all of these things that's wrong with how people engage with their phone, but if you're Nike and you're considering this, right? You're thinking, okay, shorts would be cool. Let us use some user-generated content. We'll sponsor some athletes. They can do all that for us. It's low cost. They shoot it on iPhone. It's perfectly acceptable for our entire audience. And it just keeps people
natural.
And it just keeps people front of mind.
low cost is relative. Let's just start there.
Right.
Yeah.
Low cost is relative.
Because it's $4 million for an endorsement, but you got to make 3 posts a month.
Keep going now.
Yeah.
But my point is, they're like, when do we want to capture somebody's attention? Well, when they're scrolling through Netflix, trying to find something to watch for the night.
Yeah, we just capture them for an hour.
And we just captured them for an hour, right? That's the difference of video, and that's the difference of content. And, that's also one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast is, really long form and to, have an in-depth conversation with people who are have successful businesses, who are doing really cool things, where we also talk about topics in our organization. And so don't get me wrong, every once in a while, because this is kind of like our time to get together, we throw out dumb Batman jokes and,
yes,
hopefully we'll make some shorts out of it. Right.
Never.
But at the same time, Batman will never be
It's going to be a documentary.
You know?
Dumbass. Didn't you just learn?
So, for us, this we feel like people will be more engaged with when they want to understand the process. Because especially if you talk about like our audience on this show, our audience is entrepreneurs, people who are looking to make a side hustle, somebody interested in finance or technology.
People that are interested in hacking their own life.
Yeah, and in optimizing or improving their own life, right? I think they take more from these practical, in-depth conversations than this Twitter thread. 15 different ways that I was successful by just trying to get you to engage and subscribe to my newsletter and hit the subscribe button. That's new on my Twitter account.
That's not automated with ChatGPT.
Right? Or it's like, the robot voice. It's like, this is how I turned $1,000 into $100,000.
Show me a picture of your puppy.
It's like, I opened an OnlyFans account. I sold my soul online, right? Or it's something dumb where they conveniently leave out like a very key detail. Like, my dad gave me $25,000 to do this. And then I paid him back, but I only started with $1,000.
Let's qualify this. You said OnlyFans, and then my dad gave me $25,000 to do this.
Okay, this is not a Batman joke. I'm talking about
that was a bad man joke.
Right. But my point is like people talking about
serious.
investing in real estate or other stuff like that. It's all clickbait.
It is really clickbaity.
Just trying to get people's attention span for like 20 or 30 seconds. And if I was a brand, I would not want to be there. I would not want to be there in any meaningful way trying to produce an outcome. If I was just wanting to get eyeballs and a constant reminder that we're Nike and we have cool shit, and if you want athleisure and comfortable shoes, right, we're probably your guy.
I do think that brands need to be in the space.
100%.
But I don't think, and I think quality brands deserve quality content.
Oh, yeah.
And so I do think that there's a way to do it that, I do think Nike has to advertise on Instagram, like to make money on product. However, I think again, like the story you're telling matters.
See,
You
I
know-
would actually disagree with you. I personally bet you that Nike could probably minimize some of their social media presence and everything else. And I bet you if they focused on their merchandising with retailers, and if they focused on owning that customer data and communicating individually with those customers via email or catalogs, I bet you they would almost have a more engaged clientele. Because I honestly, I feel like most of the consumer products that are on social media, like they're just, at least on pages, it's just it hits a dopamine. You know what I mean?
But I would draw a correlation between apparel and the need to always have the latest and greatest thing, which is a correlation of like, give me the next funniest thing on my phone that's right in front of my face. Dopamine hit. Oh, that's hilarious. Or like. Oh, I got the new pairs of shoes. Or, oh, I got the new Nike shirt. How many people that you know that rock all these brands wear something out? Like I wear out all my Lululemon stuff.
I hear you,
Not a
but
lot.
I don't think that posting on their Instagram account or TikTok or wherever they get them to views, I honestly think it's a lot of the social advertising. But
that is social advertising. So like you're getting in
maybe-
front of
maybe
somebody
I'm-
who's
maybe
doing
it's
the
5.
nighttime scroll, and then Papa Swolio comes up and says, "Put your phone down, put your phone down, put your phone down." And they scroll again, and then it comes up as Nike, and they see kind of like the Liver King. He's playing a game, and you're picking your character, but it's your own Nike shoe. It's like click, 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 click. Stop on the one that you like the most, and then they're sitting there trying to stop on a single frame with their thumb. There's all kinds of different ways that you could do it. I think that both
does it leads to sales? That's my question. I don't know.
So there's brand recognition, okay, and then there's long form engagement. And what I think the question is how do you influence somebody to make a sale
Well, I think personally,
or to make a purchase? Sorry,
Nike creating like clickbaity content, I think like I go back to like quality brands need to produce quality content. Like I don't view that as quality content for somebody who is a market leader.
That's my point.
Clickbaity content.
I feel
But
like
I think
Nike
you
could do less.
create clickbaity content that is more on brand. Like, and I'm talking holistically and not like calling out Nike here.
Yeah.
But I think you can tell better stories because I think there is a need in the marketplace right now for just non-crap content.
I would agree. It's flooded with non-timeless content.
Yeah.
And when I think of the earliest, shortest commercial or something like a short before shorts existed that really caught my attention, do you remember when Apple came out with the iPod, but the focus wasn't on the iPod, it was on the white headphones?
Yeah.
That was a story. And those were, 20, 30-second commercials?
Yeah.
Those were pretty freaking powerful.
But do you remember like the commercials, and I think it was ESPN, where they're like in an office space and then they would have like the guy like bust through the wall, tackle somebody.
Yeah.
It's like
Batman comes out.
quality content, hilarious, clickbaity, but that shares something about their brand, shares something about who they are, and it's not just like the click, click, click thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you could do that on that scale.
I agree.
And
So this is kind of why we're just using Nike to sort of hypothesize here. And this is where my brain goes as somebody who has run analytics for large scale digital advertising and marketing organizations, everything else. I think Nike could solely rely on user generated content to really push their new products and their apparel and play off those people's audiences. And then Nike itself could focus on just the really core quality pieces. Because when I think about Nike, you got to think about Nike has the most iconic athletes in every category in every division. Right?
I would
of
say not on
sports.
their page. So I would say, hey, I'm going to pay you like influencer marketing to
They
do
do
it
a
on
ton
your
of
page.
influencer marketing.
But I wouldn't use it on my, like, at least this would be my recommendation. I don't do placement. Like I said, I just create the content. I would argue that Nike should just say, hey, we'll produce the most epic content that's clickbaity, hilarious, but it's not user generated and then like you should create it yourself.
So I haven't looked at Nike's socials at all
haven't
recently, but they have endorsed athletes, like they have CrossFit athletes, and there's more money now in CrossFit than there ever has been, but there's not a ton of money like other sports, not even close. But they have, I mean, I see some of those, the women that are sponsored by Nike up at like Dick's Sporting Goods. And so when you talk about influencer marketing, that is a lot of their way that they get reach, to your point, and to the point about the documentary. I would say that they're more focused. When you get that big, it's really the brand recognition and getting people to associate with your brand. That the way in which this brand operates and what this brand represents is what I want to represent. And that's what would influence a purchase. So I think if it fits anywhere in that arena, then that's great, because there are girls that see like Lauren Fisher or Sarah Sigmundsdottir or some other Nike athletes like Matt Frazier, or some guys who would see Matt Frazier. They're like, oh, they wear Nike and they look good in Nike and they're good. I want to be good and I want to look good. I'm going to go buy Nike Metcons.
Right.
So that is kind of connecting the dots here for what their play probably is. Or one of their plays. They probably have a whole playbook. So
and that was, yeah, and I hear you there. And maybe I'm just focusing on a specific strategy with them, but I don't know, when I look at social media feeds, you know, and because originally how we got on this was like the rise in video and shorts and everything else. I see it as just a lot more junk content, you know. And don't get me wrong, the memes and the comedy and the dumb shit people do is hilarious, and it is a great way to pass time if you are just looking for a good laugh or to lighten the mood. There's a lot more really funny, good content like that. But I'm talking what I'll call like demand generation oriented content. You know, that's what I was really focusing on. And I think that, like you said, there's a place to align and sort of draw a line in the sand with, is this a quality representation of our brand? And if it is, it goes on our page. And if it's not, you know, let's leave that to other people who are, you know, brand ambassadors or affiliates, or, you know, because they're not pushing us, they're pushing them in our stuff to their audience who, you know, they are going to know the best. So, but moving on to, you know, one of the other topics that I wanted to talk about here, we talked about shorts, and that sort of leads into some of the trends that are coming up in video that you're seeing, that maybe you're thinking about, you're having to evolve your business with. I know one of the trends right now is a lot of AI-generated video, AI-generated sound. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that, and you know, what your thoughts from a business perspective are with it?
I probably have controversial thoughts compared to you guys about
that's
AI.
Fine. That's completely
Scott's
fine.
fist bumping in the back.
Hey,
I think when you take out the creator from the creation, I think something happens in a negative way.
So there's a parallel to software development here as well, that I think once you allow something to become cognitive and start creating, and then it just continues to create and has no biological function, so it just creates nonstop, like it has infinite Adderall, right? As long as you don't unplug it, it's going. That thing is going to go so far down a rabbit hole that we're either just going to watch the weirdest Quentin Tarantino movie that we've ever seen in our life, or we're never going to be able to connect the dots with how this thing got there. Or it's going to supersede all of our capabilities so quickly that we're not even going to be able to keep up with the trail of like how they built something.
Well, and to his point and to your point, we actually see it almost the exact same way you see it. I know that might sound odd because we're in technology and we're using it and we're applying it.
Super pro.
But I'm very skeptical of it in the context of like what you said. It's this. Let me draw a little bit of a parallelism here. Okay, so I led the analytics division here at 3 Ventures until I became the guy who was running the company, right? Just at the time, that was the role I fell into. And when I was doing that type of work, it was always, okay, your data can only tell you what's happened in the past. And so if you're going to keep doing things the way that you used to do them in the past, maybe this is a good indicator of what could happen or what might happen in this seasonality or this trend or going forward. I draw that same parallel between AI, which is largely trained on all of the content, information, etc. on the internet as of a certain point in time whenever that AI model was built and trained and released, right? And so you got to think about it like this. It is largely performing the largest amount of, it's not plagiarism, but what's it called when it's very close to plagiarism?
Plagiarism.
Yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I never got popped for plagiarism, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah. So there's a word,
Yeah.
okay, but it's
mean, you're
basically a mass regurgitation of what already exists and what's out there. And like, here's the deal. That can go and create a bunch of new content and topics and trends or strategies that are already working. But let's just look at the history of human nature. I would say in the last 10 years, so from 2013 to 2023, I would say that content on the internet has become a bit more ridiculous, a bit shorter in attention span, a little bit more extreme because everybody's like always trying to take it to the next level. It's also at the same rate gotten more creative, more crazy, more fun.
I have a story on that later.
More exciting. And so the AI, how is the AI going to interpret what that is, right? Or how is the AI going to interpret when have we had enough and people actually wake up to the fact that, you know what, like, yeah, it was entertaining me, but this has taken us so far off of like a fundamentally sound place as a species. Like, I feel guilty for this. And that's why I'm in the same camp of where you're at, is because, you know, to err is to be human. And it basically being creative could be making errors or making mistakes. And you're like, oh, yeah, wait, actually, this is
Genius mistake. It happens organically. So the evolution of the society from a creative perspective happens organically. And the problem, then this is why I said, you know, cognitive AI, I think the real big issue is when we let these things run unchecked and you essentially allow the normal human creativity that would influence culture, and you would allow that organic process to happen. If you just allow the AI to do it, it's not being led by the humans. So now the humans are like, to your point, where do I want to follow, or what direction do I want to go in? And because we're now at a snail's pace and those things are running like a damn Ferrari on a racetrack, they're just outpacing everything. So the bounds of where our society is progressing to, we're not even close to it. And
Yeah.
this is not just the arts, right? This is also technology. And so this is kind of like the Terminator moment, where you realize that not only can these things outpace us, and it's not even a fair race. There is no race. We don't even qualify. But what happens if those then get into something in a physical form?
Yeah,
So,
and I think art is saying, like, art, when you talk about cinematography, storytelling, is saying something.
it is.
So when you're having someone with, like, the first thing we learn about God is that he creates, right? So we can create because God created.
so you're a god.
No, that's not my point.
I
Yeah.
was just being funny. I was not being serious at all.
Batman in?
And so I think if we remove the moral, because AI has no moral standards, and you're talking about what is a society, art, what would art then say if
Mhm.
art is then created by a computer?
Mm-hmm.
I think that becomes a very slippery slope.
Yeah, I agree, because you look at art, if you study art, and, you know, shout out to all you people who got art degrees and did nothing with them or did something. But my point is,
Asshole.
they would actually, you know, be able to identify like key periods. Like, for example, the Renaissance, you have, you know, different forms of enlightenment, you know, as you go back into like the Byzantine Empire and everything else. And then you go all the way back to the Egyptians. There were different periods of human intelligence, art, culture, etc. I don't think that changes, but with AI, I'm not sold that we are going to be able to get a form of culture from it that produces that feeling that you have, you know, because we have a biological interconnectedness and feeling towards each other when we're around one another.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not really studied very well, and there's not a lot of research on that. But
Well,
if you have
I would stop. I would say there's probably a lot of research on that. We just haven't looked at it.
perfect,
Yeah,
there isn't a
Yeah.
ton of research that I have looked at yet. Maybe that's a good topic for another day. But my point is I don't think a machine's going to be capable of that. But what I do believe is, as we talk about the trends, the things to be careful of and cautious of, I think short term, if you're an entrepreneur or you're a content creator or you're somebody who's going to rely on content to market and promote your side hustle, your business, I think you have to have a strategy for AI, because in the next 3 to 5 years, to get eyeballs and to get views, you're going to need it. But here's the caveat. Go back and look at the 2020 or 2012 duplicate content update from Google, where they used to rank content that was basically copies of other content, right? And it was such a problem that they basically had to go back and say, who was the first person to produce this content? Only rank that person. I think we are coming to another critical moment where essentially there will be a forced identity and verification system on any type of platform that has global reach and scale that you can publish and promote content on. I think you're going to have a creator ID. It's going to have to basically you're going to have a level of authenticity. It's going to have to reflect you or show you in some degree or be an original work of content, art, voice, etc. And it's going to need to come from a place of originality, because if it doesn't have those things, and let's say you're just a verified user and you're just mass producing a bunch of content that is digitally created, there's not a touch of humanity in it, right? It doesn't have nice production quality. I really think you're going to be heavily dinged for that. I really think there are going to be some consequences, because I believe society is going to go into sort of two directions, right? One direction is AI content's great. Look at all this cool stuff I can create. And then the other one is going to be, at least in my mind, this has gone too far off the deep end. And so I believe to get past this 3 to 5 year window, we're going to have a vomiting of mass regurgitation of content. You're going to need to be thinking, okay, long-term, 3, 5, 6, 7 years from now, am I going to have this level of originality, this level of humanity that I'm going to get rewarded for long-term? But in the short term, can I use some AI or some tooling to represent my humanity or represent my creativity or represent my authenticity? I think that's the winning formula.
And it's ironic that you say that, because today, I believe it was Samsung was considering switching from Google to Bing as the primary search engine for their phones. Google stock was down, I think, 3% or over 3%. And Google basically at the same time was talking about, hey, we might have to create a different type of search engine, to your point about verified content or original content. The internet really doesn't become anonymous anymore. You almost have to prove, because of AI, that you are who you are. The beauty of the internet 25, 30 years ago is that you could be anonymous, because we didn't have these 25 or 30 years ago. Let's just say 10, 15 years ago. You could be anonymous because that was the whole point. So this some guy that nobody knows was putting out this amazing content, or was stitching together these YouTube videos, or wrote this great blog on some topic that I was interested in, or lady, whatever. And that was great. And you didn't have to necessarily expose your identity, and you could have a lot of reach. But now we're going to get to the point where it's almost like you have to be who you are and be 100% authentic and transparent. So like if you want to do something, you're going to have to open the door to everybody and let it be seen. Like you can't live a double life anymore. Like there's some people that have a certain identity on the internet and then an identity in regular life. And
that's the only way it was ever going to work, because at first the internet was about,
well, that's not the only way it was ever going to work.
Hold on.
It's been working like that.
Let me get to this, right? But it's the only way it was ever going to work when some form of cognitive intelligence was able to be produced by computers, because of all the things you just mentioned. They can constantly work as long as they're plugged in. It's 24/7. There's no paid leave. There's no sick leave. There's no family time. They don't need to sleep, etc. So there was always going to be this point where the internet reached that. And the downside is, it's going to give governments a lot of power, and the social credit score and everything is coming. It's the American society, in my mind, is too distracted by all of the 10, 30-second hits of dopamine right at the stoplight to realize that they're trying to pass this act on TikTok, which basically would give the government complete and total control.
Yeah, I think I said this on last time's
over
episode. It makes the Patriot Act look like child's play.
Right.
Yeah.
And then on top of all of that, to market or promote yourself, guess what you're going to have to do?
Verify.
You're going to have to verify yourself in all of your content. So we can go down the deep rabbit hole, but verifying yourself in the content is, I think, how we keep humanity alive. How we keep humanity functioning is figuring out how to make sure there's regulation and transparency in the place in the government. And with that, that was my follow-up to your question. I'll give you a chance for a little rebuttal or a next topic if you would like to move on.
No, I mean, like, you guys are experts in, I'm going to broadly say this, and this is like the internet as a whole. Like, in terms of Google Ads, utilizing and placement and things like that. Scott's laughing in the background. Wouldn't you say that's kind of, yeah, he's nodding.
Google's core business, the way they make money, is under heavy attack right now.
Yeah, so like I think you guys understand that on a level that I don't. What I understand is video production, like genuinely, and I think AI is a threat to that in a cultural sense. Like if we're talking big picture still, I think there are uses that I've seen actually that I think are really cool. Like for example, I'll give you one example. On Instagram, I was scrolling, and this director, I think it was Ryan Booth, who's like a really famous director. He like posted this story of how art department recreated using Midjourney a old vintage photo of the family he was shooting a video of, and I was like, that is the coolest thing. Like you could never do that.
You couldn't.
Today, and I'm like,
so
that's a mini piece of the greater story. And he even said in his story, like, hey, this isn't like the main focus. It's just in the background. I was like, that's actually kind of cool.
This is a really cool topic because this is where I think there's a lot of advantage. The AI-based tooling that empowers creativity, that empowers thinking and strategy, right? Because strategy is creativity in a structured context. Right? Creativity is creativity in an unstructured context. That's how I at least see the relationship between the two. The tools that you have that allow you to think faster, be more inspired, move quicker, get something done, add in that one finishing, polishing piece, that is those, I cannot emphasize that enough. Figure out what your AI toolbox is going to be for whatever skill set you have, and go and use that. Like you don't have to stay on top of to date with all of the AI tools and everything else. You can go sign up for a newsletter, pay $5, get those sent to your inbox, but at least just read that and then go, oh, hey, I need to build props. Okay, what's a great way to get some prop ideas? Oh, there's a tool for that. Or I need to write, sales emails that are specific. There's obviously ChatGPT, or I'm a video production company, right? I'm a video production company. And, I need some help with CGI, and we have this idea, and so maybe it presents you with some mock-ups. There's all these things that you can do to accelerate that execution process.
In our world, when you start, I think it's a slippery slope of using tools.
So, but the tools are really...
Finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like, I think, and I don't know where that line is for me, having this been like a new thing that I've been thinking a lot about. Because I think when you remove the like I said earlier, remove the creator from the creation, I think things happen in a negative way. Like, I think the photo is one thing. Like, I can't physically create that, But now, for example, editing. If I'm going to have an AI edit my videos for me, and that's a tool, I think there's a loss there because it's not done by a human. So
but
I think that's for me. Like, I don't know that line of someone taking out, someone editing and taking the creator away.
But think of this as more like the tools that you would use during the editing process. So let's just say, I don't know what tools you use. Let's just say you're working in Adobe Premiere, you're editing. You have tools built into Adobe Premiere. Those are tools, a part of the editor. You might have other AI tools that might provide you with, hey, analyze this audio, automatically transcribe, put this text in here, only have it 3 words, make it switch when the audio switches and based on the frames.
Yeah, just faster.
Right. So you're going to be able to produce things faster. So my next point in this conversation was I think it's really important for people to not lose focus for what they want to do in their life or what they're interested in their life. Because if things go
Good
in
luck.
just hold on. If things go in a positive way, what we're going to see is those who can produce, they're going to be 10Xers, right? I'm not saying 10X is the number. I'm just saying that that's the term, right? I'm talking like Alan, right? 10X, they're going to be way more productive. And so therefore we are going to be able to produce a hell of a lot more. So if we're producing something like 5 to 25 times more than we're producing right now just in the arts, there's going to be so much content. So where are you going to give your time? Because the only thing AI is not going to do is going to give people their time back. It's not going to make more time. We're all going to die at some point, and we all have a finite amount of time. So where are you going to place it? Because now there's going to even be more distractions, more cool shit, and just generally speaking, more stuff you're probably interested in. So the question really comes back to, how well do you know yourself and what are your interests? And I think that when you look at what's going on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok right now, that doesn't look like a bright future. Scroll, 30 seconds, scroll, 30 seconds, scroll.
And even what you're talking about, which is like going back to our mission as a company, like creating redemptive, truthful content, like depression rates across all those platforms are huge for youth. You know, like,
oh yeah,
and now you're
huge.
Yeah, and now like AI, and I want to be the opposite of that, right? Like I want hopeful content.
God, it'd be so nice to like insert Andrew Huberman directly in this podcast and be like, dopamine and how that relates to videos and social platforms and everything we've just been talking about and how the brain's actually working and why people are depressed.
Okay, let's
yeah.
I want you to finish this thought because I think this is going to lead into a really good question I have. You were talking about
the current thought that I have.
Producing thoughtful content.
Yeah, I think like when you're talking about AI and creating just mass content, you know, what we've actually worked with a lot of different mental health organizations over the past year. Just finished up a film for one of them, like a long format film, and like every youth said in their interview, like, oh yeah, social media was a detriment, you know? And so when you're talking about 3 times the amount of content just because of AI.
That's a very conservative number too, by the way.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what is that going to do as a society? And I think like when you remove the creative from the creation, I think what you're going to do is 10x that number as well.
10x the detriment.
The detriment.
So
for me, I'm like,
like,
as a content creator, I want to do the opposite. I want to tell truthful, redemptive stories that move people.
Okay.
You know, and so that's a positive. That's hope-filled. And I think while doing that, like, yes, like we can talk about like quality brands deserve quality content. You can still create quality reels and quality content, you know, for those people that are hopeful, not like just trash.
Is that your slogan, by the way? Quality brands deserve quality content.
Is it
like a principle?
Over the last like couple weeks, our team internally has been using it, and I've really liked it. So sorry if I've said it a few times, but
no, it's great. I just wanted to kind of highlight it that it was a really good piece. Yeah,
no, I mean, I think so many times, like people, at least that we've been in conversation with, are like, oh yeah, I just like want this like authentic video. And I'm like, well, authenticity is just fabricated.
What is the quality of your brand? Exactly. And then how do you pair the quality of your brand to the quality of your product, right? And so the authenticity, you know, that could be a really good piece to that.
I think when people think of authenticity, what they actually mean is just like shot on an iPhone, like in low quality. However, quality doesn't necessarily mean
quality doesn't necessarily mean what?
Quality doesn't necessarily mean that the video can't be good. Like quality is in story is different than quality of content.
Right.
You know, and then I also think, you know, authenticity is like, well, what is authentic? Like on social media, what is authentic? And I think every single one of those influencers is fabricated.
To a degree. Yeah.
It's all fake.
It's all fake.
You know, I think...
And like all of what we do, like when we filmed with you guys, docu-style, way more authentic than like a commercial, for example. But we had a 2-ton grip truck unloaded. And like you guys talked about like all the stands and all the lights. It's like, it's docu-style. It feels authentic because it's who you guys are.
I feel like
and that's the story that we're telling. However, it's 100% fabricated. Everything that you see on social is fabricated.
Yeah, I think it's 2 points here.
Candid versus produced.
When I see docuseries on Netflix, I feel like when they're interviewing people that I've been in that interviewer's chair before because of the work that we've done with you. Going into the social media platforms and the influencers or the couples or whomever that's making content, I honestly think there's a small handful of them that their personality and their content are so in alignment that they're not producing junk. You're just getting a lens to the life of this person. Like, for example, there's a guy named Juju Mufu.
What a name.
You've seen him on a Taco Bell commercial for the Super Bowl 3 or 4 years ago. He's this uber buff, anabolically swole guy doing the splits on 2 classroom chairs, holding a barbell over his head, and I think he had a horse. He had a horse like Halloween head on. And it was for a Taco Bell commercial. But when you look at this guy in from people that have met him in person, that's exactly how he acts. He just does a bunch of crazy shit with all his friends. But he looks like a bodybuilder, and he could move like a gymnast. And he just produces the most outlandish content, but you can totally tell that it's in line with his personality. It's not being fake. He's not some girl doing OnlyFans because she doesn't have any job prospects. It's not somebody that's just producing content. Or I feel like sometimes when you see some of these couples that post stuff on Instagram, maybe that's just like the playfulness in their relationship. Maybe that there's a lot of realness to that. But I've also seen, to your point, on like some of them, because my wife likes to follow a couple of couples, she's like, this is us. I see some of their content, and I'm like, you guys are just producing content to produce content. And sometimes I see their stuff, and I'm like, that's actually hilarious.
And I agree with you. So this is something I wanted to get into. So when we talk about, strategies for entrepreneurs or people who are looking to do a side hustle as it relates to video, the level of personality that you can have that is really candid, I think can go a long way. And the only strategy that I have really seen to get that type of content, and it's a level of commitment, you have to have the cameras constantly rolling. Because like you said, like even the stuff we did, the docuseries or whatever, it's fabricated. The best stuff is just going to come to you like a jolt of energy on a whim. And if that camera's not there and somebody's not recording, like you're going to miss that spark, that humanity, that moment of greatness, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the content that, you should be aiming to put out there, or the real content where it's like, you're talking about, you're having a bad day, these are the struggles you're going through. This is how you're trying to get through it. I think that is probably a very good winning strategy for somebody, who's wanting to do a side hustle, or somebody who's an entrepreneur or looking to promote their business. I think that's probably a good thought. What would be your consideration given if somebody came to you and said, okay, with what we just talked about with AI, your thoughts on video, what would be a good strategy to get that out there in your mind?
So to refine your question, I felt like there was 4 questions in that.
Oh, I thought I gave my answer and then asked the question. My bad. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Like, what is like your main question?
My main question is, if an entrepreneur or somebody who had a side hustle was coming to you and they said, Kyle, with everything we've just talked about on the show, the future of video, the stuff that's a trend right now in video, AI producing a bunch of regurgitated content, what should I be considering for my video and content strategy to really, like you said, have that level of authenticity, not have everything feel super fabricated, be authentic, be real, talk about real challenges that people have instead of just, more smoke and mirrors, or more that perception that everything's great and you can do this. And it's...
Yeah, I think when you talk about like a side hustle, like it seems like they're promoting themselves based on what you're talking about. Like, oh, I'm going through this stuff.
Or an idea or concept or something, right?
You know what I mean? Whereas like if I'm selling this water bottle, like that's a different, like I'm not going to talk about how this is like the negatives about this water bottle per se.
I'm just going to ask you if you're thirsty.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
know, like,
yeah.
and I think there's so many. I think you have to look at where your brand is positioned. You know, so like if you're selling like your side hustle as a product, that's very different than like you as an individual, because like authenticity is going to look a lot different. So, for example, like Dr. Squash, I think that's
Sasquatch.
Yeah, Sasquatch. The
yeah.
deodorant.
Yeah. So like
Bar soap
the
too.
funniest videos I've
Oh,
ever
yeah.
seen, but very different than Dove.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And so I think if you're like, hey, I have a side hustle, it's like, well, what is your brand position? Like, because then someone like me is going to come along and say, hey, I want to create a video for you. What do you want to say? You know? And so like someone like Dove is going to say, hey, I want something very different than Dr. Squash.
Dr.
Am I saying-
Sasquatch.
Sasquatch? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I said it wrong twice now.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Just think like a Bigfoot.
Next time I mess it up, Batman voice.
That's
Wrong.
That's a really good point, though. It's what is the perception of the brand that you want to portray, and
Yeah.
is
Where's
it
your
is it
position?
you? Like, is it your identity, like your face, your personality? Is that something, or is it a product? And maybe you have to produce somebody else's ethos, and so maybe the consideration given is work with a side hustle that aligns with your character and your personality, because you're probably going to have more success with
It's
that.
so funny that you say that. So when I think about products that I've just bought on my phone on a whim, they have been people that they had a specific problem in their life and nobody had a product out there for it. And so they made their own product and they made an advertisement and put it on some social media platform, and they didn't make it fake or try to instill an emotion in you. You're like, hey, I had this problem. This is the thing that I came up with. This is what I'm offering. This is why you need this product. Not why you need this product. This is why this product is the best. And so for me, there's a company who makes a gym workout bag. They're called Haven. It's a really small shop. I've been looking for a super organized, completely rigid workout bag that I could take that's going to last 10 plus years. I've gone through like 4 of them. I've been working out for almost 15 years now. It's like $250, $300 bag, but I bought it and I'm like, I'm not going to buy another bag for 10 years because the bag is legit. And there's been a couple of other products like that I've also bought because they have a lot of direct alignment with the things that I'm focused on in my life. And somebody else who I would have never known about had it not been for social media, they made a product that I'm like them. And this thing solves the same challenge that they had in their life, right? Authenticity. It's authentic.
Yeah, it's authentic to who they are. They're not hiding anything.
No, absolutely
You know what I
not.
mean? And I think that just authenticity, the word is overused, like as a whole, because it's all fabricated. Like they're curating that message to you in a positive way.
Okay, so yes, I would say instead of it's authentic. It's fake.
Yeah,
It's just not real.
Synthetic.
I just
Yeah, it's
personally
synthetic. I agree.
Producer Scott coming in with the late night voice.
Well, I wanted to say that to Kyle, not to interrupt you, Kyle, but it's like you're going to be like the organic art, right? Just like how we eat. You can get fast food, right? That's not so good for your diet. Now with this mental diet, to your point, you actually know cinema. You actually know theater. That's a proper mental diet. So I think that would decrease, hopefully, in theory, like people not just feeling so depressed by content that's like fast food that's not proper, you know? So I think there's going to be this difference in the future where is that synthetic art? Oh, they got the award for that. But organic art or human art, whatever the terminology
Like
is.
there's going to be a category for it.
Yes, just like when Curtis shops. So just like when we all shop for food, is this grass-fed meat? Now it's like this guy went to art school, or this is human art. This is not synthetic. This is what we really need to be ingesting.
And I think like going back to like, hey, is that a slogan? Like I think people recognize that as a whole, not necessarily like my work. You were very generous, but like as an industry, I think it's noticeable the differences.
Scott, we need a 4th chair.
Welcome to the podcast.
Get on the
Scott.
show, baby. That was good. That was
Scott's
good.
just over here on the show with the switcher, just switching to himself, switching back to us, and then we get to see his beautiful face.
That was nice. Please chime in at any time because that was a really good point.
Yeah. And it sounds much better when you interrupt me than when Curtis does too, by the way.
Wrong.
But
hey, I play a very strategic role here, okay? When you're talking, I have to interject some comedy, all right? And when I talk, you have to interject some comedy too. That's just the way it works.
All right.
Otherwise, it's dull.
But Kyle,
No
like
problem.
what you're talking about, where whether it's like the persona, I don't think that the amateur is able to capture that. You know, whatever terms you used before, but it's the way that you cater to each client. I think that's the gold mine of the future. Everyone wants content. Before, as Tom Cruise was our hero, right? My mom loved Ricky Iglesias, right? Garth Brooks. There was these stars. Now everyone has their little TV in their pocket, and everyone wants to be a star. And it's like, if it's going to be synthetic, we're all going to be stuck in the junk drawer of like, who wants this? What's actually valuable? You might find a Glock, you might find a rubber band, but it's dried out, you know? But with you, I am very impressed, and I would bet the house on the trajectory that you have on your professional career and where you've been. I've been learning a lot. I'm excited.
It's a really great point.
And speaking of which, you know, talking about your professional career and where you're at with everything else, I want to get into some rapid fire questions so we can just get some stuff right off the cuff from you. You know, because I feel like now everybody's a little giddy and
I'm a little nervous.
We've got
service design me over
we'll
here.
Get back into seriousness.
we've got some rapid fire questions. All right,
Somebody quick, put up the Batman light.
The goal of this segment is to answer these as quickly as possible. Maybe we'll get some gold in this, maybe we won't. But this is for folks to get to know a little bit more about you. All right, you ready?
I ready as I will be.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
One word to describe your entrepreneurial journey. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
One word.
One word.
Challenging.
Challenging. What's your favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
Nice. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl for sure.
Mm-hmm. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Teleport. Easy.
Yeah. And your go-to productivity hack. What's that?
Go-to productivity hack. I know these are rapid fire, and I'm failing on the rapid fire part.
All right, next.
I think doing less.
You need an AI assistant.
Like not working
Hey, that's a good answer.
like 24/7. I think that's a new one. Like genuinely.
But doing less is 2 words. So next.
Balance. Balance.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah, balance.
All right. What's the one piece of technology you can't live without?
I mean, I would probably say my camera. I mean, I literally work with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that time that you take off, what's the best book you've read lately?
John Mark Comer wrote this book, and I haven't read it, but I've listened to his podcast, and it's on my list. But it's the Relentless. I'm gonna butcher the title, but it's basically like relentless. It's like end, hurry, and it's like basically taking hustle out of your life in a positive way.
Yes.
And I think
giving yourself time to think.
yeah,
I like that. We're going to talk more about that here in a second. What celebrity do you wish you could work on a video campaign with?
Any Chelsea soccer player of all time.
All right.
You're a soccer fan. All right.
Oh, yeah.
The most rewarding part of owning your own business is?
I think getting, like, genuinely for me, and I know this is probably going to sound narcissistic, but like making the decisions. Like we either succeed or fail because of me, and it's like all the pressure's on me in a positive way. Like I enjoy that. I think that like I played college soccer, like I love that feeling, and you can't you can't get that anywhere else.
You can't replicate
So
it.
if we have to
replicate
one
it.
word this, is it control? Is it
No, he likes
direction?
to create. And to create, he needs to provide the direction,
Yeah.
and to provide the direction, he needs to call the shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably it.
This segment was it wasn't one word. Why did I? Sorry,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And this might lead into the next one, which is, what is the hobby you have outside of your work?
New one for me, woodworking.
Hey,
Trying to get
there you
into
go.
that.
Have you found yourself struggling to have something else to do besides your job?
Yeah, so my wife has joked for years, like, Kyle, you need to find a hobby, like a creative outlet or like something else to do.
That's not
'Cause-
work.
Because like early on, I didn't have a team, and so I would be working, and I'm sure you guys probably had something similar, like 24/7. Like I always had another video to edit, and I even went home the other day to my wife, and I was like, "Hey, today was like a hard day, but oh my gosh, my team accomplished like 4 other videos. I was in meetings all day. My producer was setting up the shoot for next week. I looked at her, I was like, remember when I had to do all of that myself? She's like, yeah, and I didn't see you. And so like it has been hard, but with a team has come like more time in a positive way.
And that is the brutal reality of being an entrepreneur and starting a business is you have to work a short period of time, maybe in 3 to 5 years, like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. And the challenge with that is I don't think a lot of people can tune themselves into that mindset to move forward, because you don't really ever have a day off. You have time off. And so time off can be like, oh, wow, like I've had today off and it's a Sunday and it's 1 p.m. and then boom, something comes up and you're like, okay, opportunity, we got to go hop on that. So
well,
you
in
don't
our
have
world, someone could say like literally, someone was like, hey, do you want to go to Kenya and shoot? Like literally my wife knows that I could be on a plane at any moment because we have a project somewhere.
Yeah.
Like that's how we live our lives. Like my wife and I that's like customary. But like literally we could be Sunday afternoon. I'm like eating dinner with her. Someone calls me and says, hey, you want to go shoot a video somewhere?
Yeah.
And then I'm there.
Off to the races.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is going to get into some good stuff. Let's talk about some of the challenges you've had. We'll wrap up with this. So I always like to ask a couple questions here. First one, you nailed on it.
Of course you do. 'Cause you
Hiring,
like to talk all the time.
hiring a team. What were some of the challenges you went through hiring a team?
I think originally was like the idea of just like, how do I go about it? Like, and what is the right time? Like I remember talking to one of like my business consultants and I was like, I'm overworked, and I couldn't even like see past like the ability to hire a team. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm so in it that I can't even see outside of myself.
Yeah, 100%.
You get so wrapped up in everything you have to do, and then the next thing that you have to do, but you already don't have enough time, is you have to build a team.
Yeah. And it was like the most daunting thing of all time. And then what happened in our industry, and I know in California as a whole, is like AB 5, which basically said like
You can't subcontract with
You can't
somebody who's
subcontract.
directly generating revenue for your organization.
correct. So I met with like some lawyers, and it impacted at least our industry as a whole. And so basically there was no option. Like I had to, and what we were doing is what sucked is half of my time was just organizing vendors. And so I was like, hey, can you work on Thursday? Hey, can you work on Friday? And then our clients didn't have the same faces and people. And like, then we'd come back because we have repeat business, and they'd be like, hey, where's Happy?
Right. Where's Chelsea? Where's this?
Yeah,
Where's
exactly. And everyone was like,
Happy is, let's clarify, was one of the people that worked for you.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's his real name. and or Justin. And so people were like, oh, he's not here today, and he had another project or whatever. And so having a team has been like reliable. Right. And I think there's things that I'm growing in as a leader as like, that's a new thing that we've been doing this last year, is having a team. Like our industry comes from a very freelance industry. So
Yep.
I think like people being internal is a different shift. So, and we've had like interns that were part-time, and then different roles and different things. So we're figuring it out in a positive way. At least I am, on like how to structure a team to fit our needs, to fit our demands, and trial by fire.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's really the only way too, is through. So when you went and you started bringing on staff members, how'd you manage the cash flow? Because I think that's always a very big concern that comes up when business owners start talking about hiring people. That's a cost, and it's going to be there pretty much regardless.
Well, I mean, for us, I got to a point. Let me say it in two ways, like talking about cash flow, yes, but also like with my wife, like just looking at me and being like, Kyle, something has to change, or like our life is going in
The wrong direction.
a wrong direction. Not like divorce or anything like wild, like that's never on the table.
But it's just, our relationship is basically taking a
she's
back
like,
seat in the
when you're
priority scale.
here, you're not here. That's what she
you're
said.
not
I'm
you're
like,
not checked in. You're busy doing work stuff, and so you're present in the room, but you're not physically present with her.
Oh yeah. And so I think to me there wasn't another option, because first, let me just start here. Like, I love my wife, and so I will do anything to protect that relationship. So there wasn't another option. Like, I had to figure it out.
Mhm.
And so the money didn't matter at that point.
it's really it forces you to focus on where you give your time, how much time you actually have in a day, and when you know that you need to get things to a state where it can be wrapped up and you could pick it up again on a different day when the sun comes up. Because there's a start and a stop, but there's never an end. And for a lot of business owners, especially when you're starting for the first time, you're just thinking, oh, I have all this stuff to do. You're just in a yes mode. Yes, 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 yes. And you're thinking that I just got to do the hustle and the shuffle to get to where I want to be. And that's the case sometimes, but by no means is that the case all the time. Yeah. And actually, the further you can get away from that mindset, more likely the better off you're going to be.
Totally. And so on the money side, it's actually kind of interesting because like our industry as a whole, I would argue, is pretty expensive.
Yep.
And so what I mean by that is like
the average ticket price is high.
Yeah, and people's day rates. So like everything works in a day rate for us. So if I'm to rent a camera, or if I'm even to say, hey, Alan, Curtis, can you be on set with me for this day? There's a day rate attached to that. And so it actually was kind of unique in the way that like if I'm to give somebody a salary, in some ways I'm saving money.
Right.
And
because
so,
you're fronting that money to give them the consistent pay, and you're making up for it over time. And that sort of gets into the next question that I have, which is the client acquisition. So obviously you do that now instead of just doing day rates here and there. You obviously have to feed the machine, feed the hopper. So how have you gone about making sure you have enough workload to fulfill that overhead that you have with staff?
Yeah, I think this is so like whereas I would say last year, like our pain point / like the thing that I had to figure out as a whole was staff. Like, how do I have like a full-time staff? And we have always had clients who have like consistent work, and super grateful for them. They're amazing. And now we're stepping into this season of like, now that I have more time, like how can we step into some new, like how do we get new clients?
Right. You talked with me about that last time we were here shooting a video.
And so I think for me, it's like, okay, we've operated at, say like we're like level 1, level 2. How do we, like, I feel like our company is positioned in a way to be able to operate at a higher level or expand our reach into like, say, other states or other areas, so it's like, I think that's the biggest question when you're talking about client acquisition. It's like less of like, I don't know you. How do I get to know you? And how do I create your content for you? And so it's less of like client referral, because we get a lot of clients that way, and more of how do we expand?
How do we get in front of our potential
and I don't
audience?
have that answer.
And the irony is you might need to become the
you're at.
agency to do that for your business. Like, because some of that agency work for how you would get your stuff in front of people is in alignment with what you need right there.
Maybe that's something we could talk about. Maybe that's something we could, team up on.
I mean, we're on a podcast right now.
We have a whole team that could help you get in front of and disseminate that information in front of the right audiences, right? And you guys produce video content, which we need to, right? So maybe there's an opportunity to figure some stuff out here. But with that said,
shake and bake,
shake and bake, baby.
Ricky Bobby.
Twinning. That's what that was. Any follow-up questions for us before we wrap up?
I'd like to thank sweet baby Jesus, Powerade,
sweet baby infant Jesus.
I'm on fire. Tom Cruise, help me.
Most underrated Will Ferrell movie, go.
Oh, the other guys.
That's my favorite.
Bye, Sheila. I'm not a big Will Ferrell fan.
Step
Really?
Brothers.
Okay, what would you go?
I mean, I've watched his stuff, but it's not. I'm more of an Adam Sandler guy.
Elf.
Really?
You got to go Elf.
Elf.
Yeah.
Elf is a good one.
Curtis the Elf. What's your favorite color?
It's Buddy the Elf. What's your favorite color?
See, he knew.
Yeah, Adam Sandler. I go Vince Vaughn even above Will Ferrell.
I like Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
I don't think
Wedding Crashers is epic.
Honestly, I think
John, you don't get it. He's just stage 4 cleaner. Let's get out right now.
like, have you seen 4 Christmases?
Yes.
See, like, to be honest, like, I think that's up there, absolutely hilarious.
My wife thought that was like over the top, and I thought it was hilarious.
Oh my
Right,
gosh.
where they're like pretending that they're on vacation to avoid their family the whole time.
And then every time he gets interviewed, he's just like,
And every time they try to hide, then he gets interviewed and they see him on camera. That's cool.
Yeah.
But with that said, thank you very much for listening to or watching this episode of the WAC Attack podcast. If you would like to subscribe, or anything like that, you know what to do.
For Kyle's business, which you
And-
can find at.
And for Kyle's business, KWB Creative, you can find him at.
our website, kwbcreative.com, or you can go on Instagram.
Is it KW Creative?
KWB Creative.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh.
And
I was going to say, because we've been saying it wrong the whole time.
Yeah.
No, I like have like a weird slur that like
Wooba.
what yeah, exactly.
KWB. Yeah. And on Instagram, are you pretty active on Instagram?
We are.
And what's your Instagram handle?
KWB Creative.
Perfect. Yeah, and they've got a 3 Ventures short. Hopefully they'll have some WAC Attack podcast shorts on there too, so you guys can see some of the polished product. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your day.
See you next week.